Is it working now? Ah, yes. Good. Greetings to you. I am Lord Cadrian Du Flynne, and I am a wizard. Welcome to Ask the Wizard. I am Lord Cadrian Du Flynne, once again your unwilling host here in Wizard Jail, serving out my term. To answer any questions that you may have for a powerful diviner who is at your service for free. But today was a nice day. The weather was lovely, as I could have told you it would be. Spot of fun when, from the window of my guest room here at this establishment, I was able to watch the guardian dragon slip its bonds, fly up and nab a Pegasus from the from the local governor's favorite herd. It was quite comical watching them try to rebond him. It had a fun meal. It was dinner and a show. His dinner, my show. But I assure you that I'm sure that that won't be happening again anytime soon. Quite the embarrassment for the jailer. In global news, of course, the Goblin Uprising that I had predicted years hence has occurred. I am happy to say that many of the students of my academy were at the forefront of fighting off the little fiends. And again, it's as I've told them in the past. Once their population reaches a critical mass, there's not much that you can do to stop them from coming forth, boiling out from their warrens and attacking anything decent or looks like it has anything of value, which certainly was the case. However, I think it was so that they didn't have to pay me for my prognostication regarding the event. They were not as prepared as they should have been if they had only listened to me. Why would you ignore a powerful diviner? I don't understand, but it turns out there was still a relative minimal bloodshed. Goblins are nasty, and their shamans are tricky, but they don't have a good counter yet for the level of magic that we've attained, so... Now, fireballs and the goblin menace is pretty much handled, I believe. Still, we are on alert. Unfortunately, they haven't weakened any of the bonds placed upon my magic, so if a goblin comes in here, I'm going to have a rough time of it. So let's just hope that this jail is secured. Probably the biggest news of all, though, is that out in the wastelands, the orcs have all congregated under a single government now. And it's not the one that can grunt the loudest or has the biggest muscles and sword. They actually have the stirrings of what looks like some sort of tribal hegemony, which can mean one of two things. Either they're going to unite as a giant army and try to wipe us out, but I don't think so this time. Of course, I would love to spend a few days doing the divinations to tell how the fate of this new orcish kingdom will do, but signs point to good. They have outreach to several ducal lands along the borders of the wasteland, and I believe they're going to try to sue to be accepted as a civilized race and a nation to be recognized. It's kind of exciting times, honestly. The orcish menace has long lingered over our head, much as the sword of doom. We can certainly hope that things will work out. I personally don't have great umbrage against the orcs. As a matter of fact, I think as far as a race that's been persecuted for some time, they actually have some potential if they could just get past their bloodthirsty ways. But this isn't the place for me to pontificate about what's going on in the world. You probably are here to listen to me answer some questions. Unfortunately, I only have one question today, and from all the snickering that my jailers have been doing, it must be an interesting one. So without further ado, let's get to it. Dear Wizard, have you wizards all taken a vow of celibacy? Why is it that I can't get any of you wiggle finger go boom types to lighten up and have some fun? Signed, Gretchen of Greyhawk. Now I know why the snickering. Alright. Oh, dear, dear, dear. Clearly, this is a question that comes from a different realm than our own. In this world, where I am, in my realm, wizards are people. Just probably like you yourself. We are people. We are blessed with a gift, an ability, passed down through several bloodlines, that gives us the ability to wield magic, either at an instinctive level when we are young, to where we can refine it through the use of spells and some subtle other means. And in that case, we are every bit as much like anyone else. We have our passions, we do things. There are some who choose, of course, to be celibate. Striving to master the art of wizardry oftentimes requires a kind of focus, and those who are truly focused may choose to put other pastimes to the side. That's not universally the case, I assure you. And you know, as a I've been a wizard all my life, of course. I can tell you that not all wizards are celibate, certainly. In fact, we have bloodlines where, there's been a lot of non-celibacy going on for wizards throughout the millennia that we can track. So yes, clearly our realm is not your realm, your Greyhawk. I'm familiar with it. It is not part of our realm. Different rules apply to wizards of different realms, of course. For instance, there are realms where magic is primarily done by a singular race who, through hereditary lines of sacrificing to dark gods and other things, have managed to maintain a pure bloodline of spellcasters. The spellcasting usually comes at great cost, but it does set this group apart from the rest of humanity, and therefore gives them a singular title of a claim to nobility and powers like that. In situations like that, one must always guard one's will, lest the demons come a-calling and you're done. So sometimes you can't afford to divert your attentions through fraternization of members of the opposite sex, maintaining what keeps you alive and vibrant and powerful. In other places, and now I'll conjecture into your world of Madame Gretchen, is that your tip-off was wiggle finger go boom. You see, some places magic has a completely different set of rules than mine. In my world, magic makes anything possible. We actually strive to define and compartmentalize magic to make it a bit more predictable. Codifying spells, for instance, and controlling the outflow of a wizard's magical talents is seen as valuable because it structures the mind, focuses the power, and rather than just random magical expressions going off all over the place, which can create havoc, especially if you have the young war mage in your home. You certainly want to direct that as quickly as possible, or pretty soon all of your forks are smashed flat, or what have you. And in other worlds, however, magic is learned differently. In the world that Gretchen is from, wizards don't learn the entire principle of magic and all that is possible. Instead, they snatch at a particular ritual and series of invocations which can create an effect. These spells are fuel, basically, that the wizard throws his will into to enact an effect. They can only do it so often. It is a taxing process that as they grow in experience, they can handle greater and greater volumes of magic. But they don't just learn to freely let magic flow through them so that it is an expression of their will and focused by the effect, but not fueled by the magics residing in one's head or body. It's a different style, really. It's more challenging because it is not innate to one's own nature. Yes, it is a more cerebral pastime, career, as you would, in which one basically drives the energy into one's brain to cast it as one would wish to. It's a bit different. And in pursuing the level of power that these wizards can get, oftentimes it is a focus that demands the entirety of the attention of the wizard in question. Many of these eschew the kind of normal interpersonal relationships which would challenge that perception of celibacy, if you know what I mean. It's hardly a universal. Some savants don't need to put as much focus in. Just a lifetime of challenging adventurers to gather up the experience one would need, the exposure to different volumes and texts of magic from which they can draw forth the patterns required to master more and more powerful spells, and they can go off and do whatever they want, or whatever they want. So that even in your world, that is not a universal. There is one thing, though, that I can probably link most wizards to. Not all, of course. There are always variations and things. But most of us wizards don't like getting into melee range in an uncertain circumstance, if you know what I mean. We're not exactly... well, to put it as gently as I can, you, Lady Gretchen, sound like the kind of adventuress who would intimidate wizards with risk of bodily harm that would prevent us from casting spells, if you know what I mean. I've known a few rather dominant adventuresses myself, some of whom did intimidate me a fair amount. And perhaps it's your approach, being a bit more direct. Perhaps if you, say, either got to know a wizard of sort and a relationship began to bloom normally, or perhaps if you cut to the chase with a bit of a fine drink. Speaking of which, part of my reward for the predictions of the goblin invasion was a nice mug of lavender melon wine from the Elven Land, so got that to look forward to. One of my favorites. If you wish to bribe me, lavender melon wine from the Elven Land, so very good. But, again, each realm has its own rules. Also, the order which one belongs to may impose a certain set of rules upon the participants as well. Often these are flavored by the founder of said organization. For instance, in the academy, we have behavioral rules. We try to impress upon each young wizard the importance of maintaining a sense of one's own possession, not flying into passions and fancies, but regarding oneself with a certain amount of decorum and understanding the consequences of one's own action. It's very important. It's not only important to keep oneself, how can I say it, clear-minded and balanced so that when you do get to the level where you can rend reality asunder with your mind, you don't slip off into some sort of a rage or frenzy because of a jilted romance or some such. Clear focus is a very good thing for any spellcaster. And, of course, as part of the academy training, we teach general life skills, and that also includes keeping one's personal integrity intact. Not sullying one's reputation with crass behavior or, sometimes the unwanted side effects of some of these relationships are avoidable if one can just master and harness one's tendencies, especially when one is young. So, generally you do have the odd dalliance that happens, but we generally try to tell them that there's a time and a place, and once you graduate, you may do whatever you wish. Of course, the exception to that are those who are enchanters, of course. There's more challenges than most other wizards will have because of their ability to influence the minds of others makes it tempting for some of them to bypass the slings and arrows of interpersonal relationships with a quickly worded spell, and then that is a sham. It is a horrible, horrible act. Taking away another's free will and entering into a relationship that is unwanted, unsought for. That's always been a dark mark in wizardry. Those who fall in love with us wizards sometimes wonder, did I truly fall in love with this wizard, or did they cast a spell and ensnare my mind? It does happen sometimes. But, as a diviner, I can tell you that it's something I would never do. And in fact, occasionally I get a fairly good retainer for detecting if enchantments have been employed upon a person. There are some very suspicious people out there. And unfortunately, every once in a while, I do find that I can confirm their suspicions. So, naughty, naughty enchanters. Also, I will say that sometimes there are other aspects in play that can control one's actions and guide one's interpersonal actions. Sometimes one's religious views can have a distinct impact on one's behavior. It's no different from wizards as it would be for anyone else. Some wizards have demanding gods that require abstinence, as there are probably some out there that demand that a wizard attempt to beget as many children as possible and have a good time of it. So, if there is an outbreak of this kind of religion in the scholarly circles where you are from, Lady Gretchen, then perhaps that is another answer, and you may have to roam afield if you wish to find a wizard to dally with. Now, of course, some would say that since we wizards oftentimes don't spend a great deal of time in exercising and building up our fortitude in different ways, one may say, well, what's the loss? Well, we are people too, of course. And many of us, strongly yearn for that kind of relationship. Magic can be a very, very lonely journey. mastering spells, spending days in contemplation, preparation for rituals, reading ancient tomes. It's a good thing to have a reliable companion near for conversation, to distract one from the tedium of endless study and research. Not going to lie, there are a lot of lonely wizards out there. And for those who are interested, there's a lot of rewards. For one thing, while wizards have wonderful minds, often, many of us wizards also have some sort of a past that has driven us to focus so strongly on magics. In some realms, for example, almost all wizards have some sort of dark mark upon them that scars from childhood of abuse, perhaps, that drives them to master magic so they can master the world around them. Or perhaps it was maybe a broken heart that causes one to try to push away one's personal pain by studying magics and throwing oneself into the apprehension of as much lore and knowledge as possible. Sometimes it's a diversion of one who's facing one's passions that truly are frightening, and instead they choose to sidetrack into a field of magic. There are as many reasons as there are wizards, to be honest. Sometimes these individuals need something that they can't ever truly attain from magic. The magic just distracts them. And these can be the most rewarding wizards to pursue. Once you break through those barriers, you will find a lasting companion who truly may even be very, very, very grateful for such companionship. Of course, if you're just looking for a one and done, well, there's wizards who engage in that as well. I would say that wizards are rewarding in other ways. For instance, without getting graphic or anything, well, sometimes those spells can be useful for a variety of things. Wizards specializing in transformations, for instance. Again, getting into the details is probably a bit too graphic, but there are those who have bent their magic to carnal desires. And apprentices often learn little tricks and things when the passions run. As younger wizards, these little things get bandied about, and snatches of scrolls, parchments, and whispered collusions in the halls. I remember my days as an apprentice when we would learn little snatches of magic for yes. Not going to get into details. I can hear you snickering, you sniveling. At any rate, wizards are worthwhile targets of your affections. I encourage you not to give up, but don't intimidate them or break them. Then you get a reputation, and no wizard will have anything to do with you. Well, I think that has sufficiently answered this particular question. I again entreat you, if you have questions, or you just like to see an old wizard blush, fine. Please feel free to leave them in the comments below. And also, if you wish to tell the whatever way that you are viewing this, if you wish to tell them that you wish to continue to view the Ask the Wizards much as a book, to subscribe, that is possible in many cases. At the very least, like this, like me, like this, and enjoy it. Perhaps in the expression of a thumb up that is common in many cultures. That is a sign of approval, and I would certainly appreciate such things. but none so much as if you would put a comment in whatever question is dearest and nearest in your heart, or the heart of one of the roles that you may play in your life. From the perspective of your cat, even. What have you. I am certainly here and interested in answering whatever you have to lessen my sentence, and to of course help those of you who can't just answer your questions with a casting of a spell, much as I can. So, I am Lord Cadrian Du Flynne, here once more in Wizard Jail, wishing you the very best of adventures, and may the gods of magic smile upon you. Thank you, and farewell.